Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
two certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only two best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go. Hello.
Hey.
All right, before we jump into one of our favorite things to do, which is having an interview with a normal person, I want to remind you that this past, Tuesday? Yeah, we just started this. Our doors are open for new coaching clients. We're taking on a new 20 to 25 people within the next week, basically. We have a week left.
As of next Friday, we're shutting the doors for this new round of coaching clients. Mm-hmm. And we won't be opening them again until probably late March.
If you want more about the process of coaching and just like the depths of the work that we do, go back to Tuesday and listen to the episode we published about why career coaching has almost nothing to do with your career. It was illuminating, if I do say so myself.
It's a lot of the stuff that we tell people when they reach out to ask about coaching. And we're sharing that to you en masse right now in case you're like, what is this coaching thing? What do I actually expect if I decide to work with you? We get very much into that. Mm-hmm. So go back and listen to that one if you're intrigued. And you've got a week.
I will share a little bit more. I'll share some other tidbits at the end of this episode. But just know that you don't have to know.
Tidbits.
I hate the word juicy. Okay. You don't have to know for sure that you want to do it. You just have to be really serious about talking about it, in which case then you can go to the link in the show notes and fill out the form on that page, and we'll get you on our calendar to talk about it. And this is for people who are interested in starting ASAP.
Yeah. So, if you're interested in starting, but not necessarily in the next month or so, then we do have a wait list, and you can let us know in your wait list sign-up form when you think you might want to get started.
The link to that is also in the show notes.
It's all in the show notes.
Yeah. So, again, wait list doesn't mean that you're guaranteed anything.
And we can't tell you when exactly, but you can give us your rough timeline, and we'll see if it works.
Yeah. So, okay, we'll talk about this more at the end. I just wanted to keep reminding you because I ain't gonna shut up until it's over. So this is a conversation with my current client. This is maybe the first normal person interview I've done with someone who I'm actually still coaching. Yeah. But it's a little bit different because she's also been my client in the past and she's come back.
I was going to say, she's had a new client.
We've had multiple rounds of coaching, maybe 4 at this point, I think. So I really, really, really wanted people to hear her story just because of how quickly the turnaround was for her. I mean, literally it was 6 weeks from, I have no idea where I'm going and what I'm doing, to, oh, here it is. This is what I'm doing. And she didn't force it. She didn't have to figure it out. It came to her.
Which is an interesting contrast to a conversation you had a while back about sometimes it takes a long time and sometimes it doesn't. So it's interesting to hear stories about situations that change kind of on a dime.
Yes, and keep in mind, we started coaching years ago.
Sure.
So she's been doing a lot of the priming work for a long time. But yes, when she got out of her own way, that's what started happening. And she totally changed her perspective on what job fulfillment looks like. Obviously, the title of this episode kind of gives it away, that she thought that a job is meant to be something that saves you from your misery. And she has a very different perspective on that now, much healthier perspective, and we're getting into that. So, you want to read Sarah's bio?
Yep. Sarah started out with a business degree working in the finance function of a Fortune 25 company. About 3 years into her now 6+ year career, she started questioning if there was more to life than working a 9-to-5 job and subsequently plummeted headfirst into a quarter-life crisis. Feeling like a lifeless outsider in the corporate world, oof, I know that feeling, she sought help making sense of life and finding direction. Since working with Rachel, learning how to connect with and trust her own inner guidance, Sarah has flowed into starting her own dream business, S&T Destination Designs, with her business partner, Taylor. Together, they help Airbnb hosts maximize their profit with stunning interior design, 5-star amenities, and an online profile that stands out from the competition. You can find them online at stdestinationdesigns.com and on Instagram at stdestinationdesigns.
I love her business is so cool.
That is such a cool business idea.
I love the idea. The website is in the show notes. You guys should check it out. And this is something that she and her business partner thought about doing, and it just didn't work the first time they did it. And then she came to me, she got herself in the right headspace, and boom, it just like took off like a rocket.
Oh, I love that.
And all of the questions that she kind of came with answered themselves. So like that is the seed I wanted to plant today, was that you do not have to figure things out the way you think you do, the way your brain thinks it has to figure things out. You can get out of your own way and let the questions answer themselves and let the opportunities come to you in the right time, in the right way. And it feels like magic, even though it's just totally real. So enjoy this conversation with Sarah, and we will be back at the end. Hey, Sarah.
Hey, Rachel.
I am very excited to have you. I really should have done my due diligence. I'm not very good at doing that. I should have looked up when was our first coaching call ever, because it was many years ago. And actually, I'm just going to look it up now. It was June 2016.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. So like three and a half years ago, almost.
Yep.
That's a really long time. And it's been interesting because you and I have like we've come together. I think you and I have coached together 3 times. Does that sound right? Okay.
Yeah, I think we're going on our 4th time.
Oh, that's true. Okay. Well, so you're a really good example of someone who has had a lot of development and progress. It happened in layers over the course of years. Like most people don't just get it all done in one sitting. First of all, we never get it all done, but we don't get even, as much as we might wish done in that moment done, because I feel like sometimes you just need a good power washing just to get to like the layers of crap that you then need to like actually peel back. It's like if you want to like strip paint, first you got to power wash maybe the house, and then you've got to like kind of peel the paint away or something. And I feel like that's kind of what happens with some people. And I feel like that's what's been happening for you over the course of years, is you're just getting like deeper and deeper into those older layers.
Yeah, for sure.
So the reason that I was so interested in having you on the podcast is because this last time that you reached out was earlier this year. It was like, really, it was only a handful of months ago. It was like May. And you were having a pretty big existential crisis where you were questioning multiple things in your life. And you were at this point where you were like, I really just don't even know what I'm doing on multiple fronts. So if you would you give a little summary of where you were at a few months ago?
Yeah. So I was just lost. Like I had so many just personal life questions scattered around in my brain that I couldn't figure out. And I think that was one of my issues, is I was trying to figure it out, just like think it through and come up with a solution. And one of the biggest ones was, should I quit my job, pack up my life, and move to Australia for a year? Because they have this visa program that you're only eligible for until you're 30. And then once you hit 31, you lose out forever. And so I was having serious FOMO, and I didn't know what to do. So I was just feeling very like anxious and lost and confused, and I didn't know how to feel better.
Yes. So I think as I'm hearing that, I'm putting myself into someone who's listening to this, like their shoes. And I'm thinking, they're like, wait, well, if you were feeling like that, what were you getting coached on in the years preceding this existential crisis? They're like, Rachel, are you really that terrible of a coach? So do you want to tell them like what your focal point was earlier on so that they understand like how you got to like a new level? Like, first of all, to me, getting to new levels of questioning is normal. Like, it doesn't weird me out when someone gets to a new level of, I'm questioning my choices, because some of it is circumstantial. Like you on the precipice of like turning 30, that was triggering you. Like that was bringing up all these issues of like, maybe I should just pack it all in and move, which that wasn't necessarily on your mind 3.5 years ago when 30 probably felt like a long way off. So I'm curious if you want to give them a summary of like, what were you focusing on earlier that then, was kind of that you'd already addressed, or that like was no longer kind of relevant because of where you're at now?
Yeah. So when we first started coaching back in 2016, I was miserable and it was really focused around my job. So I was working then and still work in a Fortune 25, like very corporate environment. I was working in finance and audit. And I just felt very miserable in my job. I felt lifeless and it was very like soul sucking and I didn't know what to do about my job. And I just, I was like running to the bathroom to cry in the middle of the day, multiple times a day.
Oh, God.
I just felt hopeless at that point. And like, is this all there is to life? There must be more, but I don't know what it is or how to find it. And so we came across, we as in me and a couple friends, your guys' quiz on your website. And so we took that and that's how I found you. And I was just so desperate. I was kind of at the point where it's like, I don't even care what it costs. This girl says she can help me. So like, please help me. And so I feel like the first time we started coaching, it was really just, how do I feel better in my life, like on a very basic level? Yeah. And at that point, I had no concept of like spirituality or like trusting my inner guidance or your own like consciousness or anything like that.
Yeah. It was like a beginner experience at that time, which you needed. And I think like, so what we uncovered, in the earlier years was that you had this, and we'll get to this because it becomes relevant again in the story. You had this real desire for entrepreneurship, but that really, I think, was not part of your worldview at the time. Like you had this desire for freedom and self-expression and, being your own boss and like living according to your own rules and on your own terms. But that was so not a part of the way I think you were raised, and it felt terrifying, I think, to contemplate that. And so a lot of it was like getting you to the point where you were willing to concede that, yeah, maybe this is something that not only that I want, but that I'm capable of doing. And that takes a lot of work just to even get someone to the point where they're willing to contemplate a whole new reality that feels so outside the norm, I think. And I think that you're the kind of person who, for better or worse, you like, like you find the structure of normalcy comforting, or at least your ego finds it comforting, right? Like the scared part of you finds that very reassuring.
Yeah, totally. And that's actually interesting. I hadn't thought about that before, but I do think that when we started coaching is when I realized like, yeah, I have a strong interest in entrepreneurship. And that's just not something I had ever acknowledged or realized before. So I feel like it was like, it felt really good to realize that and be able to move forward with that. But also, like you said, scary because it is not safe in a way. And yeah, I felt very like, okay, great. Now I know this, but what do I do now?
Well, right. Like I'm going to have to, it just requires so much education and learning. And what am I going to have to do? So do you want to tell them what you ended up doing? Like, again, I think this is a good part of the story because it was a really great step for you, but it ended up not being the ultimate step. And I think it's important for people to hear the things that other people have done that were really good or helpful to them, but didn't actually end up quite clicking. Mm-hmm. So you decided to go back to school and start your own business. So you want to talk about what you did there?
Yes. So I was just kind of like searching for something I was interested in, what I thought I could see myself doing. So I ended up signing up for an online holistic nutrition consultant program. And it was an 18-month program. I went through the whole thing. I completed it. I'm a certified holistic nutrition consultant now, technically.
Right. Like you have that ability. You can do that.
Yeah, I do. And yeah, I thought that was going to be the thing that in a way was like going to save me from my corporate job. Like, I get this certification and then I can go on and like start my business and all will be well in the world.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, can you talk about that, the saving thing a little bit more? Because this is one of my biggest, this is one of my biggest bones that I like to pick with people. And honestly, I'm doing it because I was this person and I made this same kind of mistaken thinking as well. I think a lot of people have this savior complex, like a white knight complex with a job, or like they think, oh, if I start this business, then it will deliver me all of my happiness. Mm-hmm. And so I want to hear your thoughts about like how that savior complex is showing up for you.
Yeah, I thought that, once I complete this certification, I'll start my like online nutrition consulting company and I'll make enough money easily to quit my job and then I'll be happy. And I totally thought like, this is going to be the thing. And then I won't have to. Yeah, exactly. And I was looking for like happiness and success and that feeling of accomplishment and satisfaction, like all outside of myself. Mm-hmm. And it was still putting happiness off because it's like, okay, 18 months from now when I complete this program, I'll be happy. And then when I completed the program, well, it's probably going to take me a year to really build up a business. So in a year, I'll be happy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, putting it off, right? Till the next milestone and the next milestone. Mm-hmm. So that's what you did is you finished that program. You were working on starting your own site, like building a business. And at the time that you came back and like we started talking again earlier, really only a few months ago, there was something that was not clicking. Like it felt off. And so I'm curious now in hindsight, what do you think was like not quite right about what you were trying to do at that point, like in your business?
Well, I think that it just wasn't something that I was excited about. So I was feeling really like unmotivated to work on it. I didn't want to talk about it with anyone. In fact, when I had friends like tell people that I had this nutrition business, I felt like tense and because, my friends were being supportive and they wanted to kind of like humble brag about me and tell when we would meet people like, oh yeah, Sarah's starting this awesome business. And in my mind, I was like, no. And it just, it didn't feel easy at all. It felt very hard, like I was forcing it. And I think, I had originally picked nutrition partly because I saw so many other people go out and be successful with it. And so I thought like, oh, in a way, and I don't think I acknowledged this to myself at the time, but I thought it was the easy choice to get me going faster.
Yeah. Well, right. Because you wanted to be saved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, when I was starting the business, it wasn't something that I was excited about or looked forward to talking about. And I feel like those were all kind of signs that it was off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really true. And so when you reached back out and we had our first conversation, you were like, I started this business. I went through this whole education and I don't know that I want to do it. That's like big existential crisis right there. And then the other was like, should I just move to Australia? I mean, that's a casual thing. You live in California. Like that's a pretty big move to make it to Australia. So what I noticed was that a lot of the time people, when they're panicked and they're, they have no idea what to do, like you said, they're trying to figure it out with their mind. And what I recognized kind of off the bat was that you did not need more of that because your mind is so powerful and so is everyone's. It's just so functioning that it's over functioning. And we need to quiet your mind. And we need to get you to the point where instead of making decisions like you've been doing, according to maybe what makes logical sense, because that's very much, I think, what happened with you starting a nutrition business. It wasn't like it was completely off base. It had roots in the things that you value and that you're interested in. But it didn't feel quite right. And you couldn't figure out why, because you can't figure it out with your brain. You have to be able to feel your way and intuit your way into understanding why something is off and then how to course correct. And so what I wanted to do with you from the beginning was stop thinking and get you to the point where you were capable of listening to your own intuition. And I think I remember telling you that if we can do that, if we can quiet the noise, reconnect you to your own intuition, you will not have to answer these questions. These questions will answer themselves. And I think that's what happened, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say so.
Well, right. So we're going to talk about how that happened. But first, I want to talk about what we did to get you to the point where those questions no longer plagued, like those questions really just naturally resolved themselves without a ton of pain or effort. It just kind of naturally, like the answers just came. So I remember some of the things that I told you to do. I remember the very first thing I told you to do was we got to stop relying on other people's advice, because very heavily, like you were overemphasizing other people's input.
Yes.
So what were some of the things that you were like kind of defaulting to when it came to asking for other people's input? Like what was your MO before?
So I would constantly ask like friends, boyfriend, what I should do. Like, oh, what would you do in this situation? What do you think I would do? Do you think I can do this? Just like looking for validation and someone else's perspective. And then I think this is what you're getting to. I was Googling everything. And for anyone who listens to like all of your podcasts, I was the girl who
you were the one, the famous one.
Yes, who Googled how to tell your parents you're moving in with your boyfriend.
That's so specific. It just cracks me up because of just how unique of a problem you're Googling. Yeah.
Well, you'd be surprised how many forums there are.
I bet.
On that topic.
Yeah. I'm not surprised by that. Like that makes sense. Because I know a lot of people are Googling. But it's like you did not have, so like right there, like that just illustrates you did not have trust for your own judgment. Like your default was to trust other people. Like you didn't even know how to trust yourself. I don't think.
No.
Right. So that was thing number one that we had to do was you had to stop asking people for advice. You had to stop leaning on Google and, you know, the input of anyone and everyone, because it creates so much noise that you can't even begin to hear yourself and your own inner guidance. I was going to say hear yourself think, but again, I want to lean away from thinking and more on like feeling and letting your intuition kind of come to the surface. So that was a huge thing that we did. Another thing that we did was that you started meditating more regularly. So what did your meditation practice start to look like?
Probably the most simple meditation practice in the world. It was literally 5 minutes a day in the morning before I would leave for work. And I'm almost always running late. So it was maybe one time more than 5 minutes. And I just made it a priority. I was like, you know, being an extra 5 minutes late to work is not going to make or break my career that I am hoping to change. So I just like have a little meditation pillow that I keep next to my bed, and I sit on that on the floor for 5 minutes before I leave for work. And like, I don't even play any like music or guided meditations anymore. I just, for 5 minutes. And a lot of times it's literally like, I think about something and then I come back and then I think about something. So it's really just, you know, like probably how everyone meditates.
Well,
you feel like you're not doing it right. But even with that, just the 5 minutes a day completely shifted my life. And it sounds so cliche, but it really did.
So this is great because a couple weeks ago, we had a meditation episode with Francesca Hernandez, who was actually one of my former clients, who is a meditation guide. And we were just talking about how crazy the benefits are and that it doesn't actually take that much time to receive the benefits. So I'm curious what you think you got out of it. Like, what would you perceive as like the top things you got out of it?
Yeah. So I'd say before I started meditating regularly, the best way to describe my state was just frantic. Like I felt so frantic.
Panicked.
About everything. Like I had to make a decision and I had to make it now and I had to figure it out. And then after I started meditating regularly, I just felt calm. And like just life was like easier in a way. Like my life didn't change right away. It was still the same exact life I had been living, but it just was easier to handle. And I felt, more clarity, and I think calmer is the best way to say it.
Well, isn't it amazing that, and again, we sound like an infomercial, but it's just like, guys, this is free. And you weren't an expert and you were doing it for 5 minutes imperfectly because no one's doing it perfectly a day. That's it. And I knew how frantic you were. Like, I've known you for years now. Like, frantic comes really naturally to you, as it does to me. Like, anxiety comes very naturally to me. And to just hear someone who has so much anxiety say, all I did was like meditate imperfectly for 5 minutes pretty much every day, and I became a much calmer person, that alone is astonishing to me. Like, that should be a huge like selling point for everybody. Like, not just because it helps you tune into your higher wisdom, but also because it just does really good things for your body to not be frantic all of the time, to relax. So that's amazing to hear. And also I want you to go back and listen to this episode whenever you fall out of a meditation routine, because then you have to hear yourself say how much it was helpful for you. Because I know that you fall off the wagon just like I fall off the wagon.
Oh yeah. Like just a couple weeks ago, and falling off really proves to me that, meditation is the thing making the difference. It's not like anything else that I may have changed, which, could still help, but
that's
just
the
thing. Simple, when I stop meditating and then I go back to feeling frantic and anxious. And then when I meditate again for just like 2 days in a row, and I suddenly feel calm again. So,
yeah.
Right.
It's like, it's your medication. You need to be taking it pretty much every day. And you're right. Like, I remember when you fell off the wagon, I asked you, have you been meditating? And you were like, no. And I was like, maybe you fell off the wagon so that you could demonstrate how important it was for you to do that, for you to prioritize that. Because like now it's almost inarguable that you have to keep doing it. So, okay. So we did that. So like we had to quiet the noise, and then we amped up your ability to calm down and like tune in and just get to a better feeling spot most of the time, or more of the time. And then on top of that, the other crucial thing that we did was a la Tosha Silver. You know how much Kristen and I talk about outrageous openness on this podcast so much. We did an episode a year ago, it was like November 2018, about the book. So please listen to that if you haven't. But I asked you to start keeping a log of evidence that things were working out for you. And in that sense, like to also have you record and keep note of the times when you were actually asking the universe itself for help. Like not just, hey, like here are the passive things that worked out for me, but like, oh, but here are the times that I'm also participating, and I'm just like going to treat this a little bit differently than I would have before. I'm going to actually like, ask for help because I have no idea how I'm going to get from point A to point B on this one. And so let me just like, basically what Tosha Silver would say, just turn it over and take myself out of the equation a little bit. And so I think it was interesting because that wasn't a thing that you thought counted as developing your intuition, that signs and synchronicities and things happening outside of you count as you being a more connected person, you having like a stronger intuition. I think you thought intuition was something that only happened on the inside, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that like started happening once you started calming down, tuning in, and like paying attention?
So at the time I was living with a roommate, and we had planned on breaking our lease in the summer. Our lease was supposed to go until the beginning of January to move out. And I was pretty stressed about it. I was moving in with my boyfriend, and we had found an apartment that we really liked, and it was available early, like before my roommate and I had planned on breaking our lease and moving out. So I was going to have to pay extra rent for a couple months, which, is first of all illogical, which is not usually what I do. But I just trusted that this was going to work out, that I didn't have to figure it out. It would work out for me.
Right. You did the outrageous openness thing. You're like, I don't have to figure this one out. I don't have to make this happen. If this wants to happen, if it's supposed to happen, I don't need to interfere. It just will happen.
Right.
Okay.
So I had purchased a classic car for my grandparents like 8 years ago, and it had been sitting in my parents' garage all 8 years. I can't even drive it because I don't know how to drive a stick shift. And I had tried to sell it on and off for like 3 years. I would post it on Craigslist. I would tell some of my friends who are really into cars about it. I had one person come actually look at it. But other than that, really no interest at all. Every time I would post it, it was just scammers, and that was it. And so around that time when I was going through all of the moving stuff, I posted it on Craigslist again. And I got a response from a lady who had owned the exact same car in high school, the same model, same year, same weird brown color. And she was so excited to find her high school car on Craigslist. And so she came out to see it. She left a holding deposit, which at that point I was in shock. I was like, someone wants to buy this that I've been trying to sell for 3 years and getting so stressed out. My parents were annoyed that I was taking up their garage, and she ended up actually going through with it, and she bought the car, and it turned out to be almost the exact amount of money that I was the extra money I was spending by moving out of my apartment and into a different one early.
I mean, literally, that's just so wild.
Yeah.
And then tell them what happened with the apartment too, because there was a cool series of events that led up to you getting the perfect apartment, right?
Oh yeah. So my boyfriend and I had been looking at different apartments, and we really liked this one community, but it was a little bit out of our price range. And so I had called them to ask, because the prices had gone up from when we looked at the community a couple months ago when it was just in our price range. And then when we were actually ready to move, and I was looking at the website again, and the prices had gone up like $400 or $500 from what we thought they were going to be. So I called the community and I just asked, hey, is this just a summer thing because school's starting soon and, families are trying to move right now? And they said, no, it's not. It's really not predictable. So I wouldn't plan on prices going back down in a few months or anything. So I was like, okay. And they offered to call me if they had any apartments for whatever reason that were in my price range that just happened to come up somehow. So I was like, okay. And then I think it was the next day or 2 days later, they called me and they were like, hey, we have someone who has to break their lease. They're moving out and we can give this apartment to you. It's the best floor plan in the community, which when my boyfriend and I looked at the apartments, we didn't even really pay attention to that floor plan because it was already out of our price range. We were like, this is nice to see, but it's not even a consideration for us. And so, they called and they said, we have this apartment available and we can give it to you for this price, which was about $500 less than the market price that they were going for because this person was breaking their lease and they needed to fill it. But we had to move in within 2 weeks.
And that's when, you sold the car. And so all of the inconvenience of having to move that quickly was you didn't have to spend any extra money. And you saved money on your apartment and you got the best floor plan. And that just amazed me. The ease with which that all happened was kind of crazy, right?
Yeah. And at that point, I was so out of my head that I feel like I was able to just move with it as it was happening instead of if something like that had happened for me last year or a few months ago, even, I think I would have like sat in analysis paralysis forever. And I would have just, made my pros and cons list. I would have tried to figure it out. Yes. But instead, I feel like I was in such a good place that I was like, okay, this is working out for me. I'm going to move forward with it.
Yep. Yes. And, right. Yes. You got to a point where you were like trusting that things are flowing and I don't need to interrupt the flow of it with my like doubts and my thoughts about it. Just like the fact that like the easier things happen, the like less friction there is, often that's an indication of how correct and right it is for you. Like the more you have to push things and force them, the more it's usually not right. Or at least your attitude is totally right or totally wrong. And you're not going to have a good time of discerning whether something's right for you when you're coming from a place of force. But when you let go and things still come together, that to me is like a really reassuring thing. It means, well, this must be right for me because it's just happening without me needing to even try. Like it's just so organic.
Right. And there was actually one last thing that happened with that whole move that was kind of synchronistic like that.
Cool.
So we broke our lease, which was when you break the lease at the community we had been at, you had two options. One was pay 2 months of rent, or the second was to be what they call like rent responsible, which I think is a pretty common thing where basically we keep paying rent until someone else moves in.
Right.
But it's kind of riskier because at the time you don't know. Like someone could move in the day after you, or someone could move in 6 months after you. You just don't know. And at that time, we had asked the apartment complex, like, well, are you having a lot of interest? And they were like, well, actually, it's really slow this year and we don't know why. We have had one person come look in the last, I don't know if it was like week or 2 weeks, but just no interest. And so we went with rent responsible anyway. And then just kind of kept starting to stress over it. Like, oh my God, is someone going to move in? This is really scary. We might be paying like double rent for a long time. And then I went on vacation in Europe. And so during that time, it was still up in the air. I was fully moved out, but I didn't know. My roommate was still like working on moving out. And it was getting to the point where in a couple days, our lease was going to be up. And then we called the leasing office and found out that there were two girls who were going to lease our apartment, and they were moving in the day after our official move out day. So we paid one extra day
of prorated rent.
Yeah. And even in a slow market when there was no interest, it still, every time I started to stress and feel anxious and tense about what was going to happen, I tried to remind myself, like, I don't have to worry about it. It'll work out. I know that there's a reason we moved out at this time, and there's someone else who this apartment will serve, and they'll find it.
Yes. 100%. So that's so cool because, one of the things that Tosha always talks about in Outrageous Openness is how people get really obsessed with the odds, and they get their fear, their inner critic is very much fed by the statistics. Like there's a lot of fear mongering that goes on. And so I think you were the type of person who like was very susceptible to fear mongering, and like still can be if she's not careful. Like it's a really slow market. And how do you know that anyone's ever going to move in? Like you could be paying double rent for 6 months. How could you do that? Like, so the fact that you were able to calm down enough to trust that, I might like to put yourself on the line of potentially having to pay double rent for an indefinite period of time, and then it still worked out like the odds didn't matter, is such proof of what can happen when you just let go and you trust that things are working out, and that you're right. There's a timing to all of this that was unfolding exactly as it needed to. Mm-hmm. And then I think your roommate ended up in a really great living situation too. Like your situation was great. Her situation ended up being great. And then the girls who moved into your apartment got like an apartment at the exact time they wanted it. Like what a win-win-win.
Yeah.
Okay. I love those stories. So let's talk about the big thing that happened. Like, I'm talking 6 weeks after we had that first conversation and you started meditating and you started like, looking for signs and like actively shifting your focus to things are working out. Let me like find evidence that things are working out. You literally went from 0 to 60 miles an hour on a totally different business that 6 weeks earlier, you had no idea was going to exist. So tell me about the ease and the flow and what ended up happening on that front.
Yeah. So I have a friend so a few months prior, we had one day where we were like, oh, wouldn't this interior design for Airbnb business be cool? Kind of like if you've watched the show Stay Here on Netflix, kind of like it's really good.
Okay.
But yeah, so they redesign Airbnbs to help them get more business and be booked out more frequently. They can charge a higher rate, and they kind of redo their profile to make it more compelling. And so she's in interior design. I've always loved interior design. And then I have kind of the business background to consult the Airbnb hosts, and I'm in communications right now. So I've always loved writing as well, to like write the profiles, and then just, loving travel. So we had this day where we were like, oh, that would be really cool. We should do that. But then it just kind of fizzled out. Didn't work out at that time a few months ago. So then, a few months ago from when this happened. So then a few months later in June, her boyfriend's mom's best friend started calling her.
Boyfriend's mom's best friend. Okay, got it.
Started calling her because she and her husband had just purchased this property that they wanted to convert a unit to an Airbnb. And her boyfriend's mom had told her best friend about Taylor, my business partner, and this thing that she's in interior design and that she could help her. And so when Taylor found out about that, she called me. She was like, oh my God, like there's this lady, she has an empty unit and she wants help converting it into an Airbnb. And we were just kind of like, does this mean we're starting our business?
Right. Does this mean we have to now start a business? Like basically like fly the plane like build the plane as you're flying it?
Yeah.
The answer was yeah.
Yeah. So we just started with our first project and kind of trying to figure it out as we go. Like, as we're designing this unit, we're also figuring out how to get a business license and putting together a client agreement and setting up our website. And it was just amazing how easily it flowed. Like, it wasn't even like our choice. We didn't go out and do anything. It was this client who had the exact needs of what we had wanted to provide and talked about a few months ago and then never did anything with, was dropped in our laps, asking us for the exact business that we had wanted to start.
So what do you attribute that to? Like, and by that I mean, a few months ago, it was like the timing wasn't right. And then all of a sudden, it just all came together. So why do you think the timing wasn't right, like a few months earlier?
Yeah, well, a few months earlier, I was still in that frantic state. Like, I don't think you and I had started working together again. So I was still questioning everything. I was like, am I going to move to Australia? Am I going to quit my job? What should I do with everything? Should I drop the whole nutrition thing or should I keep pushing forward with it? And so I think at that time, we were still looking to a business as, an external savior.
Mm-hmm.
And then when all of this happened and the client was just handed to us, I was in such a better state. I was meditating every day and just kind of going through life and letting things happen for me and not trying to force things to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, I think I was, ready in a way.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, 100%. Yeah. Sometimes something comes in and it's not quite the right time because you're just not primed enough for it. And I think this should be really comforting to people that it came back, right? Mm-hmm. Like it wasn't like you messed up your chance, did you? Like
no.
It came back. It came back in the right time, in the right way, and in a way that just was so easy. And again, organic, and it just flowed. And you didn't have to try. it literally just out of the blue dropped onto your lap. And then it was like go time.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to compare and contrast how you feel about your new business with your business partner to how you felt about the most previous incarnation of business for you, which was your nutrition consulting. So like this one feels very different to you. So
yes.
How is it different and why does this one feel like the right thing?
Mm-hmm. So I talked about how nutrition, I just felt like I was forcing it. I wasn't excited. I didn't even want to talk about it with people. It was kind of like this secret part of my life. And now with this new business, I want to talk to everyone who will listen. Like I feel so excited about it and it just flows. And we actually finished our first project, and on installation day, when we were actually like setting up the room and staging everything, it just really confirmed like, wow, this is what I love doing. And it's something that, looking back in retrospect, it makes sense because as a kid, like I redecorated my room probably every other year, like repainted it, got all new bedding, like totally changed it. So this is something that I've always just inherently loved. And yeah, on like that day when we set up that project, it was kind of like, okay, this is the thing that, to use, Elizabeth Gilbert's term, I'm willing to eat the shit sandwich for.
Mm-hmm.
Like I will eat all of the shit sandwiches if it means I can do this again.
Yes. Totally. So, what I was just thinking about when you were talking was a few years ago when you were deciding whether to go back and like do nutrition school, I think you were also considering interior design or decorating, weren't you? Like, weren't you thinking about that as a program? And isn't it kind of interesting that you didn't choose that, but that it ended up happening anyway?
Yeah. So I actually don't know if I've told you this before, but way, way back before we started coaching, I signed up for an online interior design program.
I don't know that I knew that.
Yeah, I think this was like in 2015 when I was trying to figure my life out on my own.
Okay.
Yeah, I signed up for just an online interior design program and I didn't get very far.
Mm.
And then, we went into coaching. And again, I was considering kind of like interior design versus nutrition. Went with nutrition because I think that I thought it was going to be faster and easier and more stable. I had a lot of examples in front of me of people who built very successful online nutrition businesses. But at the time, I didn't have a lot of examples of how you could build a successful interior design business.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was at least clear that I wanted to work for myself and I didn't want to go work for someone else doing interior design or nutrition or something. So at the time, nutrition looked safer and more steady. So I went that route.
Isn't it interesting though that like, again, it was not a problem that you took that route because, I really think that in general, life will reroute you as often as it needs to in order to get you to your destination. And like, it doesn't matter if you take a left turn. It's just like, okay, well, we'll just recalculate this route and we'll get you to where you're headed. Maybe it'll take a little longer, but we'll still get you there. So what would you say to someone who was like, but do you feel like you wasted your time? Like going back to school for something else and starting a business that didn't end up working out? Like, what would you say if someone asked you that?
I mean, I don't feel like it was a waste of time because I learned so much going through that. And, on the surface level, like nutrition is just good to know in general, but not even talking about that, just like learning about business. And there were so many, when I was in my nutrition program is when I signed up for Marie Forleo's B School, which helped me so much. And even going through nutrition, we had like lectures and stuff about sales conversations and doing group programs and individual, like really how to structure a business to be successful. So I think that even though it was kind of an industry that I'm not working in now, there were still so many lessons that were helpful and that I can apply to what I'm doing now.
Interestingly, I sort of wonder if you'd decided to go the other route, you'd gone back to school officially for interior design, if you would have gotten those same business building lessons. Like if you would have signed up for B school, or if you would have, gotten lectures in school about like sales conversations. I sort of doubt that it would have looked the same in that way. And so it's almost like maybe you learned more about being a business person by going that route, even though it looked quote unquote indirect, than you would have if you'd gone the more like obvious quote unquote route.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild? I just love that. Like all roads usually lead to the right place, and it's fine. So, okay, now that you guys are here and you have this like very new, like established business, I want to know how you feel about the whole savior complex thing now. Like, I don't think you have the same perspective on business as you did when you decided to start a nutrition program and hoped that that would be like the thing that saved you from your full-time job. I'm not saying you've completely let go of that, because I'm not sure any of us ever fully let go of that. But I'm curious how you see it differently now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like this business was able to flow so well because I wasn't looking for something to save me. And
ooh, damn, that's a good mic drop moment there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And now that I'm in the middle of it, like, there are times where I feel like the business does make me happy. And then there are times where I'm like exhausted and wondering, is this really going to work? And so I think I've learned like everything external it ebbs and flows. Even like great things in your life are never going to be great all the time. So I've realized like I can be happy and be responsible for my own happiness without anything external. And I don't have to rely on a business to make me happy. And I think like when you take that pressure off of the business, it does make it easier.
Oh, right. Totally. It can help it flourish, right? Because it's so hard to put that much pressure on something. I mean, this is why when I talk about like a savior complex, this is why I say, and this is probably not the first time most of you have heard this, that people have codependent relationships with working. Like they expect a business or a job, or a big career transition of some kind to meet all of their needs and to deliver them their happiness. And when you do that with a romantic partner, we call you codependent. And yet when we do that with a job, we're called passionate, right? like you're just a go-getter girl. You're a girl boss. And like, yes. And it's not healthy to expect something to deliver all of your happiness and to save you from your discontent. And so this shift you've been able to make is an emotionally like really sound and mature one, which is it's not my business's job to make me happy. It's my job to tend to my own happiness, to my own, you know what? I'm not even going to say to my own happiness. I'm going to amend that to my own ability to be happy. Because that's what meditation, that's what cultivating, a relationship with something bigger than yourself and, honing your intuition, that's what that is about. It's not about being happy all of the time. It's about tending the soil and making it fertile so that happiness and a lot of other things too can grow up and out of it. So you don't have to be happy all the time, but you do have to tend that soil, so to speak, which is what you were doing so well. Like you were fertilizing that, you were watering that soil, you were showing up every day. And then naturally things started to grow without you having to like go out and yell in the garden and say, why aren't you growing, plants? Like that was not part of the equation. And that's such a much more like evolved, mature move. And it sounds like what you're saying is I'm enjoying myself so much more because I don't have that pressure and expectation on my business to make me happy all the time, ironically.
Yeah.
And not only that, there's something else, maybe like the last thing that we'll talk about. There was something else that I thought was really interesting that you said a few weeks ago, which was that having something you really care about and that you're like it's worth doing the hard work for, like eating those shit sandwiches. Having that thing makes it so that you're willing to keep growing and keep doing hard work. So like you had a little bit of an argument, I think, and maybe not even an argument, but a little bit of a misunderstanding with your business partner. And I think you said previously, I probably would have just like tried to sweep it under the rug. And this time I actually acted very differently and I confronted it. And I just put it all out in the open. And we had this really great communicative conversation, and it actually made us stronger as a team. And I'm curious how you feel about that, like the fact that you're now willing to do hard things because you care about something enough.
Yeah. I mean, I was always such a people pleaser that I never wanted to confront anything. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we just had kind of like a tough week and some like miscommunication. And in the past, and we live about an hour apart, so most of our communication is over text during the week. Mm-hmm. And then we'll have like a call here and there. But in the past, if I had a similar situation with someone, I would have just ignored it until we felt better because it was so long ago now that we don't remember it. But this time I was like, I am not letting this business fizzle out because of a miscommunication. Like, that is not going to happen. So I'm just going to have to do something really uncomfortable and bring it up. And it was uncomfortable for like 30 seconds while I waited for her response, because I mean, it's probably always better to do these things over like the phone, like if you can actually talk, but you know, we both work full-time jobs still. So it's just not always possible. So we were texting, and you know, I just said like, hey, I think if we're having feelings, we should just talk about them. You know, if we're going to be business partners for a long time, hopefully, then we need to be able to do this and to talk about these things, because this won't be the only time it happens. Mm-hmm. And it was like a release of pressure once I said that. And then she responded and we started talking about what was actually going on, which, surprise, was not even about us. It was about other things going on in our lives that were, you know, stressing us out or putting pressure on us. And we were just not managing it well together because we weren't communicating. It just felt so much better. And then we were like, wow, did we just get over our first hump? Mm-hmm. And it felt like, it was almost like validation that, okay, this is the real thing, because we're actually willing to have hard conversations for it.
Yeah. I aim to do the work, like the emotional work that it requires to sustain something. Like that to me is one of the most pivotal, like, again, mature moves that you made is, and mature means not just like, you know, I'm not talking about maturity and the like, you're a grown up who can pay your bills and like that kind of thing. I'm talking about evolution, like being an emotionally evolved, emotionally intelligent, astute person who's like willing to do that work is, again, switching from not expecting something or someone to deliver all of your happiness to you, but realizing that I have to be the kind of person who can cultivate a business and a relationship that can be a fertile ground for happiness to grow. And in order to do that, I have to be willing to have hard conversations. And I can't like be mad when like something's not making me happy if I'm not willing to speak up about it. Like that's not a very emotionally evolved move. And so you really, really stepped into like a new level of emotional like astuteness and intelligence, and it's just paying dividends to you. And I'm sure Taylor too, your business partner.
Yeah.
So, okay. Couple last things I want to ask you. One is, what would you say to people or to someone who was like in your anxious, frantic, panic shoes, you know, a few months ago? Like, how would you kind of calm their fears? Or what would you say to them?
It sounds so cheesy, but meditate. Right. And just like do what you can to get out of your head. And if like meditating is not like accessible yet, like it just feels too far, like try to find something else. Like I have adult coloring books that I used to do a lot, and that has helped me before. So when my boyfriend and I moved in together, he has a cat. So I have a cat now. And I think like just playing with the cat even is meditative in a way. It gets me out of my head. I'm just focused on the present moment, how cute she is, how funny she is, whatever. You know, I'm not like thinking and trying to figure things out. So finding something that gets you in that state for a little bit of time every day. And then just learning to trust that life is so much better when you don't try to figure it out yourself. And you kind of just like co-create with the universe and see what happens and be more open to not forcing and controlling things.
Yes. You are calmer. You make more money. The timing of things works out incredibly well. And usually things turn out better than you could have planned if your mind was in charge.
Yeah.
That's like your whole story in the past couple of months is like, you could not have orchestrated this stuff better than it ended up happening.
Totally. I mean, if I had sold that car when I wanted to the first time, I wouldn't have had a car to sell now when I needed the money.
Right. Right. And if you'd started a business when you were still in like panic mode, maybe, I think that bus would have come around again when the time was right. Like you don't ever miss your bus. But if you tried to force it, maybe it actually wouldn't have been good for the relationship with your business partner. Maybe that would have created more strain if you guys had tried to force it instead of waiting for the timing to just perfectly align. We can't know. So the other thing I would love is for you to talk a little bit about like where people can find you and what your business is and like what your website is, because hey, there might be some people who have an Airbnb unit they're looking to put on the market or something.
Yeah. So our business is called S&T Destination Designs for Sarah and Taylor.
I will link to that.
Really creative there. And our website is stdestinationdesigns.com. And yeah, we help people either get a brand new Airbnb up and running, and we take care of everything from, the design, the setup, the professional photography, writing the Airbnb profile, writing an area guidebook, and getting everything set up. So, we like to say that when we hand you back the keys, you can rent it out that night. So just taking all of the overwhelm out of the process for hosts. So we do that. Or then if somebody already has an Airbnb that they think could be more profitable, if it was redesigned or just kind of refreshed, we also help with that as well. So yeah, we are in the Bay Area, California, and super excited.
Though I bet if someone were to pay you, you'd fly out to them and look at their Airbnb unit.
Oh, gladly.
Right. Yes. Willing to travel.
Yes.
And you know what? Like as someone who stayed in some Airbnbs, it really makes a difference when you're looking at like those pictures and reading that description and seeing how, like approachable and friendly and helpful the description and like the hosts seem to be. Like it really makes a difference. So I think that this is it's a no-brainer for people, because I think you would make so much more money by having like the right looking place and the right description and all of that. Marketing yourself well matters.
Totally. And, even Airbnb, like you'll get placed higher on searches. So people will just see your unit more.
Right. Got to work with that algorithm.
Yep.
Well, Sarah, this conversation went by incredibly fast. I don't really know how. Almost an hour or so went by. But, well, first of all, I just love talking to you. And I'm really proud, not to sound patronizing, but I am like really proud of how far you've come. And to be honest, I think a lot of the work you've done in the past few years made it so that when you came to me with those big questions of like, should I move to Australia? And I don't know what to do about my nutrition business, that you had primed yourself to then be able to figure it out, because you planted a lot of seeds before. It was just a matter of getting out of your own way. Like truly the past few months have just been a monumental exercise in getting out of your own way. And guess what happened? Those questions answered themselves, didn't they?
Yes. Every single one of them.
Right? It was like, no, I don't need to move to Australia because I have this business. Why would I want to leave? And I don't need to keep working on my nutrition business because I have this other business that just naturally, organically grew. Why would I want to leave? Why would I want to keep doing that when I could do this? So again, you didn't have to think at all about those answers. Like you got out of your way. The universe showed up for you. The timing worked out perfectly. And they naturally dissipated because you had your answer.
Yeah.
And that's just, it's amazing. I think about like this story all the time. That's why I wanted to talk to people about it. It's a good example, So thank you for coming on and for proving that it is possible to get out of your own way and change your relationship to working as well, like to become someone who's capable of not expecting their job to make them happy, but being the kind of person who works on being happy so that she can be happy while she's working. And you did it in an impressively small period of time this time around. I'm really excited about that.
Aw. Well, and thank you so much, Rachel. You really have been instrumental in all of these changes for me and kind of leading the way. So I really appreciate all of the work that you and Kristen do.
Well, you're welcome. And I'm excited to, whatever our next phase is, I'm excited to see what happens between you and I next.
Me too.
Okay. Well, I will talk to you soon. And thank you again for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
We told you we'd be back at the end to remind you that coaching enrollment is open right now for one more week. One more thing that I wanted to make you aware of if you're interested in coaching is we make accessible to our clients any of our current content.
Course content.
So even if it's a course that you didn't necessarily sign up for, if you're in coaching and that seems like a relevant place for us to go together, you get access to that.
Yeah. Doesn't even matter if it's not.
You're in the Clarity on Fire world at that point. Yeah. You're like fully in it. So we have our people pleasing course. We have a lot of content about passion profiles, your quiz result and how that applies to your career. And you can delve into any of that as part of coaching, in addition to the core content, which is already a lot of great stuff to get into.
Many hours and videos and such. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a lot that goes into coaching. And
oh, yeah.
You can have it all. So keep in mind, we're not going to be doing this again for another 5.5 months-ish. 5 months? I don't know. Sometime in late March is my estimation, but I'm not sure. So this is the lighting the fire under your butt to, if you're like seriously considering it, like maybe hop off that fence and at least like get serious about, okay, could I do this? You don't have to know with 100% certainty that you want to do it. But if you're like in at least the 80th percentile, I would say, then it's probably a good time to have a conversation about it and just make sure that it's a good fit. Because I hope you know by now, we don't want to work with anyone who's not a good fit.
No, we want this to be a win-win experience. We want you to be ready for this experience, as well as that it's the right fit for us too.
So I hope that this conversation with Sarah planted some seeds about like, what's possible when you have someone helping you get out of your own way and holding you accountable for doing that work. And basically, like we talked about in that Tuesday episode, which you should go back and listen to if you haven't, how to become the kind of person who is an ideal match for their ideal job.
Yes.
Or their ideal, whatever it is they want in life. Might not even be a job. It might just be, a relationship or some sort of big transition you want to make. Sometimes,
or just want to feel less anxious and more open to possibilities.
Right. Maybe you just want to be more
trusting myself,
relaxed and at ease and fulfilled in life. And that's not just something you can snap your fingers and do. Just like you can't snap your fingers and be a perfect match to an ideal job. You got to do the work to become the kind of person who's capable of getting that job, maintaining that job, and thriving in that new position.
And we know what that work is. That's our whole thing.
Yeah, we got a whole process to help you become that person. So if that's interesting to you, then, let's talk about it. You're one of the 20, 25 people, maybe. That's it. And then we're done.
Yep. We got limited spaces. I mean, we only have so much time on our calendars. So we'll open this up through Thursday. If we fill up before
Thursday?
Then, oops. Where did Thursday come from?
I don't know. I said it in the last
episode. That's so
Friday.
weird. Why is Thursday on our mind? Okay.
I don't know. I was born on a Thursday, just FYI.
I was too.
I think I did know that. I think I forgot. Oh, Thursday. Big Thursday energy. I have no idea what that means.
Someone can write to us and let us know what that means.
Being born on a Thursday mean?
I know.
In Eat, Pray, Love, when she talks to the shaman, the little medicine man, he says that being born like on a particular day, you have a very different sort of like energy medicine based on the day that you're born.
Are there more auspicious days?
Well, being born on a Thursday, I remember because my brother and I were also both born on Thursdays. And he mentioned the Thursday in the book was the example. And it was like, I don't know, it seemed good also, but you can be kind of cocky if you're born on a Thursday. But you tend to also be attractive and confident. And I'm like, well, okay. I'll take that.
I don't hate it.
So anyway, just as a little aside.
That was a lot about Thursdays, but the actual deadline's Friday.
Yeah, I don't know jack about what Friday means, but that's when our deadline is.
Yes.
So next Friday, the 18th. So,
So we hope to talk to some of you over the next week or two.
Okay. So links for that will be in the episode description as always. And we will see you on Tuesday with a blog of some sort from me. But I don't know if it's going to be an old one. I don't know if it's going to be a new one. I don't think I'm going to rant. Just letting you know. I might save a rant for... I have an idea in mind for a future rant.
You could have dropped them a little bit more
I don't
sporadically and make it
right.
a little exciting.
I don't want to be that bitch who's like constantly ranting. That seems a little off color. So I do have one percolating, but I'm going to save it.
Right.
So anyway, you'll hear from me on Tuesday.
See you then.